Welcome back. It's graduation day at Harvard University, and as commencement ceremonies were underway, lawyers for the Ivy League school won a temporary victory in their ongoing and escalating legal battle with the Trump administration. A federal judge in Boston extended a temporary order blocking the Trump administration from revoking Harvard's ability to enroll international students. That ruling came after the Trump administration said it would give the university 30 days to challenge the revocation. On campus, Harvard University President Alan Garber received a standing ovation as he welcomed all members of the graduating class.
Members of the class of 2025 from down the street, across the country, and around the world. Around the world, just as it should be.
Joining me now from the Harvard University campus is NBC News correspondent Antonia Hylton and former U.S. attorney and NBC News legal analyst Carol Lam. Thanks to both of you for being here in this extraordinary story. Antonia, let me start with you. You were there. It was graduation day. What was the atmosphere like on campus today?
Kristen, I have been describing the atmosphere here as celebratory, but also defiant, because I have not found a single student or family member on campus who was not aware of the fact that while they were reflecting on their 4 years as Harvard students here, trying to take pictures with their family members, that there were lawyers just a couple miles down the road going into court to go toe-to-toe with Trump administration lawyers. And, of course, about 27% of the student body here at this school is international. So it's highly personal for more than a quarter of the people who are part of the celebration today. The students who have been, at times, really diametrically opposed to each other, particularly when it comes to the issue of the war in Israel and Gaza, they've now started coming together and uniting around what they say has become an existential threat. Take a listen to a conversation I had with one senior named Leo this morning, right before he processed into graduation.
We are all obviously celebrating our own achievements today for our 4 years, but I think that Trump's threat against Harvard are truly hanging over this, because without the international students, Harvard is not Harvard anymore. And, you know, we might be the last international class in a while. When people come back next semester, there might not be any international students left.
So that's sort of the other piece that's on everyone's mind. So after the party tonight, what actually happens to the 17 and 18-year-olds who are hoping to come here for the first time in the fall? For all our classmates who maybe went home to visit their families in other countries, but are worried that when they come back to the U.S., they could be turned away at the border because something changes in the courts in the coming days. They're grateful for this 30-day window here and that this judge has kept the temporary restraining order in place. But they're very aware, too, that this is going to be a long-term battle, that the Trump administration may make other moves in addition to this one. So that sense of anxiety, Kristen, I think it's going to be here for a while. Yeah, it's just extraordinary to hear that students say we might be the last international class for a while. Antonia, how is the university reacting overall to today's ruling? I would say the vast majority of students, faculty members, leadership here, you know, they're celebrating this as a temporary win. But the real behind-the-scenes conversation, Kristen, is that there is a need to sort of build the endurance for a fight that is going to last 3.5 years. So that means they are marshaling alums to donate sums of money so that certain labs can continue to do their work if they completely lose their federal funding. I have spoken to quantum physics students, people who do genetics and cancer research here, who are worried that the life-saving work that they do may not be able to continue. So there's an effort to figure out, well, how do we keep our academic programs, the sort of lifeblood of the school here and present, while also gathering a team of lawyers who are going to see this school through, because they see it as bigger than just Harvard and really as just the beginning of a broader fight against higher ed.
Antonia Hylton, thank you so much for being there on the ground, for your great reporting. We really appreciate it. Carol Lam, let me head over to you. So just before the hearing started today, we learned that the Trump administration is giving Harvard 30 days to respond to why the government shouldn't revoke the university's ability to enroll international students. Do you view this as an attempt to try to pre-butt whatever the judge ruled today? How do you view that action?
Well, Kristen, let me just say that from a competency in court point of view, this has been a complete embarrassment for the government. When a week ago, the Department of Homeland Security told Harvard, we are revoking your ability to have international students. Apparently, the government didn't realize that it was in violation of its own regulations. Its own regulations, DHS regulations say you give notice to a university, then they have 30 days to respond, and then it goes through at least 2 levels of appeal within the agency, and that's before you even get to a court. So now Harvard pointed that out in their lawsuit, and now the Department of Homeland Security has had to say essentially, oops, you caught us. Okay, we'll give you your 30 days notice. And they said, go ahead and lift the temporary restraining order. But the judge wasn't having any of that. The judge said, no, I want the status quo to remain. And she left the temporary restraining order there, and she said, you guys can come up with a language for a preliminary injunction, but I am going to enter a preliminary injunction to make sure the status quo remains as is.
Carol, is this case going to go to the Supreme Court, do you think?
I think there's a good possibility it will, because this administration is simply not giving up on what appears to be sort of a temper tantrum against Harvard, and it's going to keep fighting on all of these fronts. And the more chaos it can introduce with respect to the international student community, the happier it appears to be. So even if it loses ultimately down the road, it's happy to have that sort of craziness take place that throws students and faculty and the school off balance. That is, in effect, part of their goal.
Let me ask you about the core argument that Harvard is making, essentially saying that the Trump administration is violating its First Amendment rights. I know you've analyzed how the government is actually carrying out its case, but how strong of a case do you think Harvard has here?
Yeah, Harvard really raised 3 arguments. One was the argument I've already explained, which is that DHS violated its own rules and regulations, which they've now had to backpedal on. I'm sorry, but DHS has backpedaled on that front. Harvard has also alleged a First Amendment violation that essentially Harvard and its students have the right to express themselves, express different views, express different political views, and essentially what the administration is saying is that we don't like those views, and as a result, we're just going to take this broad brush and say you can't admit any international students. Finally, Harvard also alleges a violation of the Administrative Procedures Act, that this is an arbitrary and capricious act on the part of the administration.
Do you believe, Carol, that this case could actually have an impact on some of the other legal battles, and there are a number of them involving the Trump administration?
Well, a lot of them are intertwined. So the other significant battle that Harvard has going with the administration is this sort of freezing of grants that were promised or were in effect to, by the National Institute of Health and a lot of other federal agencies that fund research at Harvard. And they are making a lot of the same arguments, a lot of them being made in front of the same judge, Judge Burroughs in Boston. So there is an intertwined relationship among all of these cases. And it also does inform the judge as to sort of what the administration's broader attempt is here. And, it gets farther and farther away from their stated justification, which is anti-Semitism and wokeness on the university, what that has to do with funding of critical medical research or scientific research, as Antonia pointed out, is really called into question here.
All right, Carol Lam, thank you so much. We really appreciate your joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.